And good evening. My name is Ozzy Stern, a country Victorian gamer of Star Wars Armada, Star Wars Legion, and many other games. Today I'm starting a new project. I am painting Princess Leia and also a Chewbacca model. Both of these are done by Garfie's eBay store. Please check him out. Now for concept design for this, I am using this image from Star Wars Marvel Comics to get the ideas of my color palette. I'm planning on using a dead white for her shirt, her pants, as well as the face. A cracked stone color for the vest, jacket, sleeves. Flat flesh for her facial area. Black for her hair, belts, etc. Metal for communicator, and warpstone bronze for her weapon. For Chewie, I shall be looking at doing a single coat of a dark brown colour, then using dry brushing techniques to create the highlights and the accents. Now, for that purpose, I'm planning on using the oak brown as the undercoat and then a beige brown as the overcoat. For the likes of his gun, I'll be using the same warpstone bronze. For the belt, black, and for the cartridges, the bolt gun metal. On to Princess Leia first. So what I want to do is I want to get my palette out. I want to get a nice clean brush. Make sure all the thistles on it are nice and clean. And I just want to put a little bit of white onto my palette and add some water to it. This will then help me to just gently and thinly apply the paint onto those areas that I want to paint in that white color, namely the shirt and the pants. Now, by painting it thinly on the face as well, it will help me later on to actually cover it with the flat flesh paint. Now, once I've finished painting this, I'm going to let it dry and settle before moving on to Chewie. So I'm just going to speed ahead a little bit and just finish painting off the white off camera, and then I will go on to doing Chewie in a few moments. On to Chewie. Now, to start off with, I wanted to use that oak brown to colour him in most of the area that I want to do. It doesn't need to be as thin as when I'm doing the white colour on Princess Leia, simply because I'm not going to be doing too much in the way of washes, and I want this dark colour to come out in most of his recesses. So like around his eyes, around his nose, etc., around those areas that are predominantly going to be of a darker fur, like in the leg areas. I then plan on using the dry brush technique to use that beige brown to go over this again a couple of times, increasing lightness in areas so that it feels as though it has a bit more of a shine to it. Now, the paint, you'll notice, is going on nicely. I haven't thinned it out at all. It also does have that appearance of being wet. Now, this is typical for most paints, that they will dry, and when they dry, they lose that wet look. I think it's very much the pigmentation shining the light off of it when it's quite wet in a reflective manner, and then when it dries, it actually comes back quite nicely. You'll also notice that I haven't assembled this model completely. I've left the hands and the gun separate. This will help me to paint it a bit better and make sure that I get a good eye for all the detail work on the front of Chewie's face and also on his chest area. The satchel, I'm not certain what colour that's going to be. I want to wait until I've actually gone and got some source material or look up some things on the internet to discover what sort of coloration that is. I've got an idea of using a colour called charcoal brown, which is quite dark, almost into the grey range to do that, but I just want to investigate it first. So continuing painting. Now, it doesn't much matter about whether or not the paint goes over that belt area, simply because I'll be going back over it in a black colour. All it just means is that I'm covering as much of the surface area along that belt with that brown colour. I want to make sure that every single spot on Chewie is at least primed in a brown colour as a starting tone for all of his fur. Making sure to do his feet and any areas that I just can't get to or can't see when I'm looking at it in a one-dimensional facet. This is why I generally hold on to the model and just move it around a lot into very odd angles, just to make sure that I get a good coverage of paint over everything. Now, I will obviously go back and do a bit more coloration if I feel as though I need to, but at the moment I will just wait until it's dried, go back, maybe do a little bit of touch-ups in areas if that brown colour has receded, or if I feel as though it needs a little bit more of that darker tonal colour in places. It's looking pretty good so far, so I will now just put that aside and just let that dry, and then I'll go on to the arms. Oops. Yeah. Now, doing the arms, I want to hold on to the gun, obviously, because frankly, that's the only place I can hold on to it. Starting to do the furs. And this is a good thing about this model, that the fur does look three-dimensional. Sometimes when you have some models, the model is very much two-dimensional, that the fur feels flat. This one feels a lot more flowing in terms of a design. And that helps the model in many ways to actually look more alive and more actual as a figurine rather than as a chess piece in many ways. Now, I'm painting the inside of that stock because if you've seen some of the shots from the movie, you'll see that Chewie's bowcaster stock is just the outline. It doesn't have any internal wooden stock. It's just bare metal. And then by shifting the perspective of how I'm looking at it, I can actually see where the hands are to paint those particular areas that still need to be painted to get to the point where it's ready for the next paint job. So just going through, got to do that hand around the I wouldn't call it a barrel. I would a hand grip maybe for the bowcaster. Trying to ensure that I don't get too much brown onto that weapon. I'll be taking care to actually, when I paint the Warplock bronze onto the weapon, that I don't let it flow onto the fur too much. That looks pretty good. Yeah. So now I'll leave these two to dry, and then I'll come back and take a look at them fairly soon and see what I need to do next. Yeah. Now back onto Leia. We're using that cracked stone to colour in her vestal area. Again, we could thin it out ever so slightly, but we want it a little bit more thicker to cover that grey. So I'm just going to leave it as is and not thin it out. You'll notice at this point that her face has also been painted white. That's to help to make that flat flesh actually really pop when I start painting it. Now, I always start off with the most difficult part of painting the slight inner sides of the clothing vest area. I do that with the troopers as well, simply because those areas take the most care to try not to overpaint or run your paint into other colours area that you're painting it right next to. It's pretty much like trying to paint between the lines, and that section is your line marking. Now, you'll notice that unlike the Marvel comic, which had a sash on it, she has a full-blown vest or jacket. So I'm going to do the whole jacket in that cracked stone colour. And you won't be able to see it from this angle, but she's got a pair of communicators or mechanical comlink type things on her hand as well. So I'm going to leave those ones bare and instead paint them that bolt gun metal that I showed you earlier. Now, by taking it nice and lightly around the back, you'll also notice that this model has a very slight, with the jacket, like a pattern to it, very much similar to the Rebel patterns, how it's got a checkered look or a padded look for the Duras Rebel Trooper. But this is only for the bottom half. The top half of the jacket itself is quite plain and only has like a seam down the center of it, and of course the collar around the top of it. So just taking small strokes, just being careful not to put too much paint in the areas where I don't want, going around the edges of the jacket. Yeah. At this point, I'm just trying to go around that comlink smoothly and not cause too much of that stone to discolor it. I'm then going to start on the other side and going backwards towards the back. Again, ever so slightly tipping the model so that I can view it a lot easier, either by the naked eye or like I'm doing quite a bit with this when I'm painting through the lens of my actual iPad. This is why sometimes you'll see me painting at odd angles and the only thing that you can see is my fingernails. Now, the light source may not show very well the back at this point in time, but you'll see that the paint that I'm putting on is a nice tan, yellow, almost khaki in colour. And that's actually not bad for Princess Leia, for the look that I'm trying to go for. I'm also trying to do even strokes, not too heavy or not too light, and I'm trying not to go over it too many times in terms of trying to spread out that paint. It's already nice and thin in most areas, and I want to try and maintain a one tone or one colour throughout that zone. If I want to go different colours, I'll come back with a wash or with some light highlighting techniques to just make different areas pop. So now I've done the jacket, I'm going to start on doing the face and hands with flat flesh. I'm going to put a little bit on my palette and start with the hands and just ever so lightly just add in the coloration of the hand, making sure that all the individual fingers are still can be seen through the wet paint. This will help when I start doing some washes on the hand to actually go into the recesses and give that each finger definition. I also want to make sure that it's nicely spread the colour out, but not getting any onto that cracked stone. Now working on the hand that's holding the sporting blaster. Now I can't quite tell how she's holding it on the near the pistol grip near side to her because of it being so close to her hand, so close to her chest area. But I'm hoping by painting it slowly, I may be able to cover most of it, and then after painting the pistol, I may have to go back and do a little bit of overpainting of that flat flesh in those areas where the hand is still there. Now I'm going to start on the face, but I'm going to be making sure it's nice and thin. I don't want it too thick at all, especially around the likes of the mouth contours and also around the eye. I'm going to have to go back over the face again later on to put those eye markings in, the eyeball, before I put in any colour for her eye. Now, in the description, I will be leaving a link for anyone viewing this to go to Garfy's eBay page to take a look at these models, or if you wish to purchase them yourselves. There are plenty of stores both here in Australia and also overseas that you may be able to get 3D printed images of quite a lot of your Star Wars and pretty much almost any type of models through reputable dealers. I really have had good feedback from Garfi with most of his models. I only had one issue, and that was easily resolved within an hour or so after I contacted him about that issue. Now, I'm going to leave this to dry now, and my next video that I'll be uplinking in the next day or two will be painting the likes of the hair, the gun and the boots, etc. So hopefully for now, I hope you have enjoyed watching this video and taking on board some of the comments that I have made. Please like, please subscribe, please leave a comment if you would like. But for now, from Aussie Stern, I will say, have fun, see you on the table. Bye for now.